What is up, everybody? It is Tears, and we are back with yet another tier list here on the channel. So this tier list is going to be Heart Gold, Soul Silver in-game tier list. So you'll notice that the Gold, Silver, Crystal sprites are what you're seeing on the screen. I just kind of like them better in general than the Gen 4 sprites. Nothing wrong with the Gen 4 sprites. I just really like the design of the Gen 2 sprites. Anyway, doesn't really matter. This is an in-game tier list. This is not a Nuzlocke tier list. They are different lists. There are a lot of differences between the two. Just some of the criteria for this list specifically. It goes until the Lance fight, so Kano isn't included. I didn't include Kano because it's an underwhelming post game. It is a post game. It's supposed to kind of be like part of the main story, but I really dislike it. Like, you're just flying around beating all the gyms and doing some dumb story quests. Like, it doesn't feel like a story. It just kind of feels like a few battles and then that's it. So I'm not including it. I'm just going up to Lance. So because it's an in-game tier list and you're more so trying to have fun than win, if a Pokemon is able to easily gain XP and be fun, like a good offensive Pokemon with good stab moves and stuff, it might get a little bit of a boost in terms of my opinion, whereas if it's really difficult for a Pokemon to gain XP, even if it's a really good Pokemon, I might have it a little bit lower. Like, a Pokemon can be really good in a specific battle or set of battles, but if you can't really gain XP with it or like use it in all of the battles, it's going to be harder for me to put it higher up on the list. But yeah, with all that being said, we can jump right into it. Oh, and also, just to preface, the Rocket trainers and Rival, which are, somewhat big parts of the story and like big battles, they use a lot of poison types. So just kind of keep in mind that Psychic types, Ground types, Steel types, they all are kind of the best options for those fights because there's a lot of them and they're really poison centric. Your Rival uses multiple poison types no matter what starter they pick. The Rocket Grunts and the Admins all use a bunch of poison types pretty much in all of their fights. So yeah, I'll make it clear whether or not a Pokemon gets its Gen 4 new evolution, or Gen 3, I guess. So like Mamoswine, for example, is in the game, but Honchkrow is not. So I'll make that clear because Piloswine and Murkrow exist as the sprites, but like Mamoswine is in the game. Like I said, I'll make it clear when it comes to that. But again, with that stuff out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so Meganium is up first. So Meganium has good bulk. It has decent moves. But grass types are just not good. I've said this in pretty much every in-game tier list video that I've made. Grass types really kind of struggle in these games for the most part. Grass is just not a great type. There are a lot of poison types, like I just said, in these games. Meganium specifically, it is a starter, but like Faulkner bodies it. Bugsy. Morty resists all its moves. Chuck's Poliwrath is kind of one of its better fights, I guess. Jasmine bodies it. Price bodies it. Claire bodies it. Like, this thing is just set up to be so terribly hindering. So I'm going to put it in meh despite it being... No, this is tough. Because it has good stats and good bulk. And pretty decent utility moves, but grass types are so bad in these games. This is a hard decision off the bat. I'm gonna leave it in meh for now, but I might change my mind. I don't know. Okay, so Typhlosion, on the other hand, is probably gonna go into excellent. So it's got a good typing, fire, not a super common type. So you can get a lot of use out of a good fire type. It's among the best fire types in the region. for sure. Its move pool isn't great, but it has really good attacking stat. It has the same stat spread as Charizard, so it's fast and hits well on the special side. There are a lot of fights that it does well in, like rival fights, Bugsy, Jasmine, Price, Koga in the Elite Four, and just kind of is a good neutral Pokemon. Like it's not really weak to a ton of the big battles, so I'm gonna put it in there for now. Again, this is tentative. If I decide to change my mind, I will. For Alligator, I'm also gonna put into excellent. So again, with the starters, you get them all really early, so they're useful for the entire game, which is a big part of my criteria. I guess I should have mentioned that. Availability is a very useful ability to have. So the more battles you can participate in, the better off you're going to be on this list. For Alligator's a good example of that. So it's a water type. Generally, there's going to be a lot of water types in each region, but I think for Alligator is one of the best. It gets good coverage. It hits really hard. It's pretty bulky. Again, you get it early on. It gets good coverage moves. It's really useful in pretty much every fight. There's not a ton of electric types or grass types in this game that you really need to worry about, besides like Jasmine's Magnemites, maybe? Like there's just not a ton that it can't deal with pretty well based on its typing and its coverage moves. It can be useful for Claire and Lance, like the other two just are not at all. So yeah, for Alligator, excellent. Pidgeot, I'm gonna put into meh, mainly because it's outclassed. So there are a bunch of normal flying types in this game. We're actually gonna get into the other two early ones right after this, but Pidgeot has kind of mediocre stats. It's early, but it's very replaceable. It's useful against Bugsy, Morty because it's a normal type. All normal types are useful against Morty in this game. Koga, Bruno. It does have its uses, but again, I'm putting it in meh because it's pretty much completely outclassed by Fearow, who I'm going to put into pretty good. Fearow's basically just a harder hitting, faster version of Pidgeot, which with a little bit less bulk, which I mean, you're not really looking for bulk out of these things. You're looking for, a good amount of damage with the flying type kind of being what it's centered around, obviously. So Fearow, again, the same strengths as Pidgeot, just kind of hitting a little bit harder, being a little bit faster helps it out. And then Noctowl, I'm also going to put into meh. Again, Noctowl, I would say it's a little bit better than Pidgeot just because of some of the unique utility moves it gets, like Hypnosis and things of that nature. But yeah, it doesn't hit very hard. More of a special attacker, but its special attack isn't great. Again, just kind of outclassed in the normal flying ranks by Fearow. That's kind of how I see it. Raticate. I'm gonna put Raticate to pretty good. So Raticate, it's kind of underrated perpetually as an encounter. It has very good early game strength. Like it's a monster early game, even though it's a normal type. It gets Hyper Fang. It has a pretty high attack stat. It evolves early. It has decent moves. It can get Super Fang later on. It just kind of gets outclassed later on. So like this is a Pokemon where you could pick it up, use it for the first half of the game, and then replace it with another normal type. And I think that has its place in these in-game playthroughs. I think Raticate again, very solid in the early game for sure. Good move pool. Just kind of later on gets outclassed, but yeah, it's good. Furret is kind of just a little bit worse of a version of Raticate. It doesn't hit as hard. It doesn't get as good of moves, but it's pretty much the same in all other aspects. It has some HM utility, which can be useful, but I just see it as a little bit worse of a version of Raticate. Like it's useful in all the same fights, but Raticate also gets some more wider pool of coverage, some stronger moves, whereas Furret kind of just gets a bog standard normal type move set. Okay. Butterfree. So Butterfree usually is like an early game status utility kind of Pokemon that kind of struggles to keep up in the late game, but in these games, bug types and grass types just kind of they don't cut it. I mean, you think about the first three gyms, you're facing Falkner, who has flying types, Bugsy, who has a Scyther with flying type moves, I believe, and Whitney, who has rollout Miltank. So, like, it doesn't really stand. It's kind of papery in that aspect. I'm tempted to put it into Stay Away. It gets horribly outclassed by other bug types later on. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in Stay Away. A lot of people are gonna disagree with this because it does have some early game utility. Like I said, it has the powder moves. It can put things to sleep, but like it just doesn't dish out the damage that you're really looking for. And it really gets outclassed later on. Beedrill is kind of a similar boat. Doesn't have the stats to hold up late game. There are a lot of other better bug types. It has a decent move pool. It gets some strong bug type moves early on. I'm gonna put it in meh just because it does a little bit more actual damage for a longer period of time than Butterfree because it has physical attack, whereas Butterfree has special attack and not really special attacks to allow it to take advantage of it. But Beedrill has physical attack and things like Twin Needle and probably a couple other good moves, decent moves, but it's really nothing special for sure. Ledian is one of my least favorite Pokemon of all time. It's garbage. It's trash. It has good special defense, but for what? It's just going to get crushed by flying type moves, rock type moves, physical ice type moves, fire type moves. I mean, this thing gets bodied, bodied by everything it comes into contact with. Better bug types, better flying types. If I made another tier below Stay Away, I would put it in that. It's actually like maybe the worst Pokemon in these games. Oh, by the way, the NA tier down here is just Pokemon that you can't get in the Johto portion of the game. But yeah, that doesn't really matter. Anyway, Ariados, I'm also going to put with Beedrill just because, again, it does a little bit more damage. It has a little bit better moves. Like it has some utility moves that it can get later on. It's a little bit more useful. It does a little bit more damage, but again, just outclassed by other poison types, other bug types later on in the game. There's not really a huge reason to use this one. All right, Golem, excellent, easy. Easy, excellent. Golem is like the opposite of these bugs, where it may be the best rock type in the game, it may be the best ground type in the game, and rock early on is a really good type to have, and ground is a good type throughout the remainder of these games. I mean, Faulkner, Bugsy, Whitney, Jasmine, Koga, Rival, Rocket. I mean, this thing bodies so many of the important fights in these games. Um, Good rock type stab, good ground type stab later on. It does so much work in the early game. Its stats are really, really good. Even if you can only get it to be a Graveler, I still really think this is one of the best Pokemon in the game. Just avoid water types and grass types. It's not that hard, and you'll be fine. This thing's a monster in these games, and you get it so early. I mean, Faulkner can't do anything against a Geodude. Bugsy can't really do anything against a Geodude. Whitney, hard time doing much against a Geodude. Morty, I will say, is probably where the buck stops just because it uses special attacks and it's not super privy to that, but this is one of the best physical tanks in the game, for sure. And you get it super early. I don't see where you can go wrong with Golem. Crobat, I'm gonna put it into pretty good. So Crobat has decent stab moves, like you can get Fly, Cross Poison. It has a really good defensive typing. Poison Flying is a good defensive typing. It just kind of doesn't have the offense to hold up. Like, it has good stats, it has decent moves, it has the good typing, but it doesn't quite get into that next tier because it doesn't quite deal enough damage to enough really important trainers. Like you have Bugsy, Chuck, Bruno, Koga. It can do some work in those fights, but like again, Poison is not a good offensive type, and then Flying is a decent offensive type. But I would say if there were more grass types, if there were fairy types in this game, if there were more like bug types, things like that, this would be a better encounter. But isn't as useful later on as it is to start. But it is really good to start. So Crobat pretty good. Clefable, good stats, pretty wide move pool, especially with TMs. It is a normal type, and it's not really available until late because it's a Safari Zone encounter. I don't know why it's so high up, or low down in the Johto decks. By the way, these are sorted by Johto decks. Yeah, so Clefable, I'm gonna say meh. Just kind of you get it too late. It has a wide move pool and decent stats, but like by then you probably already have a better normal type if you're gonna use a normal type. So I just kind of feel like it doesn't really have a great place. Like I'm sure there are uses for it. I just think you get it a little bit too late to take advantage of them. Like you can't use it against Morty, which is a really good fight for normal types. Um, Yeah, I don't love it. Same thing with like Wigglytuff. It's a little bit more bulky, with a little bit less attacking power, but it's pretty much the same thing as Clefable. You get it in the same spot. It kind of gets a similar move pool, similar utility, just kind of a little bit different of a stat spread. It is very bulky. Um, so if you like that in a normal type, that's great. But again, bulk it has a hard if it has a hard time leveling up, I put it down on the list a little bit. That's all. No hate. I like Clefable and Wigglytuff design wise, but just not for the in-game playthrough of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Togetic, stay away. If Togekiss were available, it would definitely be higher. However, Togekiss is not available, and this thing does not get great moves. It is severely outclassed in the normal flying category. It's not as good as Pidgeot or Noctowl or even close to Fearow. There are other better normal types, other better flying types. It just doesn't hit for enough damage. Just doesn't. That's really all I can say about it. Sandslash. Again, ground types in this game are good. Sandslash is a pretty good ground type. The only problem with Sandslash, its move pool isn't great. I don't know if it gets Earthquake by level up in these games. If it doesn't, that's not great. But you can make a commitment to it, and it does have good stats. It has a good attack stat. It can do a pretty good amount of damage. Again, ground types are really useful in this game. Rival, Rocket, Jasmine Fight. What else? What else is it good for? Yeah, I mean that's kind of it. No, I guess it's kind of neutral in a lot of fights too, which is not a bad thing to have because it has good stats. But yeah, Sandslash is pretty good. It kind of gets outclassed by other ground types too because it doesn't quite have the stats and the moves to back it up, but it's a solid choice. I wouldn't put it in meh just because it is a hard hitting ground type. Arbok. Ooh, this thing is bad. I'm gonna put it into meh because it gets some cool utility moves like glare and things like that, but pure poison, just not a great type in these games, doesn't really do the job offensively. Intimidate is a good ability to be completely fair, but is it good enough for it to be at a pretty good level? No. There are other better poison types for sure in these games, so Arbok's chillin' in meh. Alright, Dunsparce. There's a lot of Pokemon going into meh. Um, Dunsparce is super duper outclassed by a lot of the other normal types. It's a pain in the ass to catch, which doesn't help. Um, its move set is pretty unique. It also gets things like Glare, good utility. I'll put it in meh, just because it has decent enough bulky base stats, but it's not a great choice. There are other better normal types that we will get to, but I would say this is your second best option for an early game normal type behind Raticate, well, pure normal type. But Yeah, it's not great. It just kind of is there. Ampharos, excellent Pokemon in these games. Probably the best electric type you're gonna find, maybe if not Magneton, but you get it really early. I don't think you can use it for Faulkner, but it's all right. It definitely has its uses. Bugsy, useful. Chuck, Claire for sure. Lance for sure. That's the thing about electric types is they're sneaky good against Claire and Lance because Lance, if you didn't know, is actually a flying type specialist, not a dragon type specialist. Don't be fooled. And then Claire has a water type and a water flying type. So Ampharos definitely hits really hard, gets good enough moves to back it up. Might be the best electric type in these games. It's hard to say, but definitely really good. Definitely hits for a lot of damage, which is important, like I said. Quagsire. I'm gonna put Quagsire in pretty good. Its move pool is actually quite good. Surprisingly, it has good bulk. It has a decent enough attacking stat, but what really sells it is its typing. Water ground, especially in these games where there aren't that many grass types, really good. It's not quite Swampert, but it's like Diet Swampert, so it's a tier below where Swampert would be. Swampert would actually be so broken in these games, but like I said, Quagsire gets a good move pool, has good bulk, um, and a great typing. Ground, like I said, really good in these games. Water, gives it that bulk. Only one weakness, useful in a lot of fights. Jasmine, um, Whitney, Morty for sure, Price for sure, maybe even Claire, maybe not Claire, but Bruno useful in that fight. It's really good. Gengar, Gengar, I gotta put Gengar in excellent. So Gengar finally in Gen 4 is able to use Shadow Ball in a way that makes sense because Shadow Ball finally became a special attack. Gengar has amazing stats. It's super fast. It hits like a truck. Um, really good stab moves finally, like I said, with Shadow Ball. It's really useful against Whitney. It can be useful against Morty if you're smart. Chuck, definitely useful. Will in the Elite Four. Bruno in the Elite Four, super useful. It can be useful against the rival and Team Rocket because it has the poison quad resist. Very good defensive typing for these games. There's a lot of normal types and not that many dark and ghost types. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with Gengar. You get it super early too. You get it before the first. So I would say it's also useful for Faulkner, honestly. You can pivot into it when you know Faulkner's going to use a normal type move or a ground type move, and it'll levitate above. Super, super good. Super, super not good. Unknown. Only gets hidden power, 70 base stats across the board. Trash. Moving on. Steelix is pretty good. So Steelix, I think maybe would be an excellent if it just didn't have to rely as much on TMs to be good. Because it doesn't get Iron Tail until late, and it doesn't get any ground type stab moves as a Steelix, but amazing defense, pretty solid offense against Steel type is a very good type in any game. It walls out. I mean, as an Onyx, it's gonna wall out Faulkner. Uh, if you get it through the trade, it's gonna wall out Bugsy. It's gonna wall out Whitney. It could do a decent job against Morty. By then, you can have it as a Steelix. Gonna do a good job against Jasmine. Price, it can body Price's Pylo Swine. And Claire and Lance, it has resist for those dragon type moves. So really, really good typing, just a little bit lacking offensively, which keeps it out of the excellent tier. Victory Bell is going to go into meh, as many of these grass types are. It has good enough stats to keep it out of the stay away tier, but again, grass types in this game, not very useful, gets outclassed by other poison types, not that useful in very many fights. It can be hard to get a leaf stone, a water stone, or a fire stone, which, I mean, I guess that doesn't really take away from it, but yeah, I don't know. Victory Bell, just kind of underwhelming as many of the grass types in this game are. Oh, by the way, Steelix, like I said, you can get it before Morty. You have to just either thief or catch a Magnemite that holds a metal coat, which is like a 5% chance. So it can be a little hard to do, but it's worth it for sure. All right, Jumpluff. Has good speed, good utility moves, which that's going to keep it out of the stay away tier, but very meh across the board. Not hits like a paper flying at you in the wind. Um, doesn't really have it has a terrible typing. No real offense, hard to level up, but it has enough useful utility to keep it out of the stay away tier. Actually, you know what? To be fair, I put Butterfree in the stay away tier, and it kind of has a similar purpose. But I think Jumpluff holds up a little bit better later on, so I'm gonna keep it where it is. Parasect, on the other hand, trash, 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 trash. Bug Grass is one of the worst typings you can possibly have for a Pokemon. The only saving graces are Spore and its decent attack stat. It doesn't really get great moves by level up. It isn't super useful against Bugsy or Whitney or Morty or Chuck or any of the gym battles, rival fights, uh, Team Rocket. It struggles to do a lot of damage. It really does. So yeah, stay away. Poliwrath. This is an interesting one. Hmm. Uh, I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna put it in pretty good. Barely though. It's on the border of the two. Um, it has a decent attack stat. It has a decent move pool. If it has like moves like Hypnosis, Body Slam. It gets fighting type moves. You just kind of have to keep it as a Poliwhirl for a little bit, but it definitely gets outclassed by other fighting types and other water types in these games. But it's useful and unique in enough fights that it can kind of serve a good purpose. Like Whitney, it can be useful. Price, Jasmine, Karen in the Elite Four. Yeah, I would say pretty good, but kind of on the border. I don't want to put it in meh just because it has too many things going for it to be down there. And you get it really early too. So pretty good. Politoed is also going to go into pretty good, but these two are not the same. Politoed is definitely better than Poliwrath. It has kind of average attacking stats, but it has good stats all around. Like it hits hard enough on the special side to justify it. It has a good move pool, like Poliwrath, and it's kind of just an above average early to get water type. So pretty good. Gyarados. Okay. um, the only thing wrong with Gyarados in any game ever is its lack of good stab moves, but it gets Aqua Tail kind of early, and it can get Waterfall, and it doesn't really need Flying Stab. Like grass types, bug types, flying types, I mean, they're kind of common. It would be useful to have flying type moves, but I think Gyarados has to go in excellent. Intimidate is such a good ability. It gets a very diverse array of moves. It hits like a truck. It has, again, Intimidate. I don't even know if I already said it, but it's just that good. I gotta say it again. Um, Really, really good Pokemon. I hate to put it in excellent because it's frustrating as somebody that plays a lot of Gen 2 and Gen 3 that it just doesn't hit hard with stab moves, but like it can finally do that in Gen 4 with things like Aqua Tail and Waterfall, so I have no choice but to put it up really high. Seeking is Gyarados if it was trash. No, actually Seeking's gonna go on the stay away. I think it might be the worst water type in the game. It doesn't get great moves. It gets Waterfall by level up, I guess, but it doesn't really do that much damage. It's just so horribly outclassed. It Every other water type does something better than Seeking. It just doesn't do anything inspiring at all. Its stats are very mediocre. Slowbro. This is gonna sound weird, but it's gonna go into meh. The reason why is that you don't get it until really, really late, and it's very replaceable by Slowking, who's going to go into pretty good. Neither of them get great special psychic stab, but they don't really need it. Their typing is good. Um, they get good water type moves. They get Zen Headbutt, which isn't bad. They have good stats all across the board. I like Slowking a lot more than I like Slowbro. It's useful in a lot of fights, as is Slowbro, but again, you don't get Slowbro until level 37. You can get Slowking as soon as you can get Slowpoke, because sometimes they hold King's Rock, and they can trade, and da-da-da. So yeah, Slowking I think is better than Slowbro, just in-game playthroughs for that reason, but both are really good once you get them to be at their highest potential. Again, good against Whitney, Morty, Chuck, Bruno, Jasmine, Price. I'm just trying to think of my rivals and Rockets because they're psychic types. They are both very good. There has to be a discrepancy, and I don't think either of them belong in the excellent tier because of that lack of psychic stab on the special side, but both good. There just has to be a discrepancy. That's why I put Slowbro in bad. Because you can't get it until really late, and Slowpoke is bad. So, like, you just make it a Slowking, and it's better. Okay, Vileplume is basically just Victory Bell. Do I have to say more? Yeah, alright, I will. It gets a little bit different moves. Its stats are spread out a little bit differently, but it's another grass type in a generation and a region that does not like grass types. Same thing with Blossom. Honestly, might be in the stay away, but has high enough stats to keep it out. Grass type, man, just not good. You get it kind of early. It gets some decent moves, but again, grass types are just not that useful in these games. Okay, Hypno. Hypno gets pretty heavily outclassed by other psychic types, but it definitely is specially bulky enough to where I feel like I shouldn't put it in meh. But you get it kind of late. Let me think about what it's useful for. Rival battles, rocket battles, Chuck, Bruno. But again, I'm gonna put it in meh. It just kind of gets outclassed to the point where there's not a huge reason to use it. Again, it is bulky, so if you're into that, maybe go with it instead of other psychic types. But I mean, Slowbro and Slowking are great bulky psychic types with an added water typing, which is really good in these games. So like, I don't know about Hypno. Alakazam, I definitely know about. So if this was Gold, Silver, Crystal, easily excellent because of how wide its move pool is with the punches, but because it doesn't have that in these games, I'm going to put it in pretty good. It is frail, but everything else is really good about it. World-class offense. Immediately, you get hit and Hypno on the same route, and it's just better than Hypno in every way. Even as a Kadabra, it's better than Hypno. Yeah, I really like Alakazam. Again, if it got a little bit better coverage or had a little bit better bulk, I would put it in excellent, but it is really good. Don't let not being an excellent fool you. If you're an excellent, you have to bring a little something extra than just like good stats and good stab moves and stuff. Like you have to be maybe the best of your type, or like be so good in terms of your stats or your ability that I just can't put you into pretty good. Like you have to be top tier. All right, Ditto is a gimmick. Is it secretly useful against Moore or Morty or Claire? You know, maybe, but not really, because you have to take a turn to transform. I wish I could speak English properly. That would be helpful for my channel. Anyway, Ditto, gimmick, stay away. Fortress, meh. So Fortress is in meh because it does not get good stab moves. It just doesn't hit hard at all. It is really good defensively. It has a great defensive type. It has great defensive stats. This thing is an absolute wall. But when Mirror Shot is your best stab move for most of the game, I cannot put you high. There are other steel types and bug steel types that are much better than. So it has to be in meh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Fortress fanboys or girls, whoever you are out there. If you are a Fortress fanboy or fangirl, um, please comment down below because I'm interested to see if you exist. Anyway, I probably just pissed somebody off, but it's all right. You can't please everybody. Nidoqueen and Nidoking. Nidoqueen goes in a meh. Nidoking goes in a pretty good. This is kind of the direct example of how I see offense and defense in in-game playthroughs. Nidoqueen is the more defensive, stat-oriented, move-oriented of the Nidos, whereas Nidoking is more offensive. Um, if you could reliably like do a lot of damage with Nidoqueen like you can with Nidoking, it would be in the same tier. You just kind of can't. Nidoking gets better offensive moves. It has a better offensive move pool. That's the same thing. I just said the same thing twice. It's just more useful in this in-game playthrough that I have created than Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is definitely good, but it just is directly outclassed by Nidoking. You're starting to see that I really heavily kind of not favor, but take into account if a Pokemon gets outclassed or not in this list, and Nidoqueen and Nidoking are a great example of that. Yanmega. So this is Yanmega, not Yanma. Doesn't matter, it's trash. Yanmega has great stats, but it does not get a good stab move until level like 60 or 57 or something. It doesn't get Bug Buzz, it doesn't get Air Slash. This thing had such great potential. This is the most disappointing Pokemon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver for me because you're all excited, you got a Yanmega, and you're just waiting on it to get a stab move. It can't even get one for TM in the main games. It's so frustrating. But yeah, Yanmega, stay away. There are better flying types, there are better bug types. It has decent stats, but it just can't take advantage of them in the right way. So stay away. Sunflora is kind of just the same thing as Blossom, to be quite honest. Hits a little bit harder, is a little bit slower, has kind of the same moves. Just a very standard grass type. A not standard grass type is Exeggutor. So Exeggutor is held back by its grass typing and by the fact that it doesn't get great stab moves on both sides. Again, you're seeing that I really value stab moves in an in-game playthrough. Doesn't get great coverage, but its stats are really, really good. It can hit really hard in spite of it not getting great stab moves. Psychic typing is pretty good in these games. It, as a grass type, kind of flips the script for poison type battles, which there are a lot of in these games, because of its psychic typing. You can hit with psychic type moves like Confusion, which isn't great, but it's not bad either, to be quite honest. It's better than a lot of the options that most of the other grass types have in these games. So, Exeggutor, pretty good. Would be probably maybe, I don't think it would be an excellent even if it had better moves because it's a grass type, but pretty good. Can't complain. Sudowoodo, surprisingly pretty good. Gets pretty good rock type stab in Rock Slide, has other pretty good moves to back it up. Not great typing for special attacks, not great special defense for special attacks. Outclassed by other rock types, but you get it early enough to where I can see it being really useful. Rock typing is really good against Lance. It's good for Price. It's good for Claire. Sudowoodo is sneaky good, in my opinion. I think people will disagree with me on this one, but I like Sudowoodo a lot. Wobbuffet. Okay. Unfortunately, I have to put it in stay away. If you're using rare candies, Wobbuffet is actually really good. But it's just so hard to level up in an in-game playthrough because you have to know, you have to predict what the opponent is going to do, and you have to take damage every time you fight with it for it to be useful. So I think it could be useful again if you're using rare candies, but otherwise, nah, it's a gimmick. Venomoth is kind of a mixture of Beedrill and Butterfree. You get it kind of late, and it doesn't hit hard enough, and it doesn't really have stab moves, so stay away. Better Grug types out there, better Poison types out there. Um, has some utility moves, but again, it just kind of gets thwacked by a lot of the Pokemon in these games. Let's see. Speaking of outclassed, Scyther and Scizor. Scyther is going to go into pretty good. Scizor is going to go into excellent. So Scyther, bug flying is what holds it back. It's really fast. It hits really hard, but it is not good defensively. Scizor, on the other hand, is amazing defensively. Just avoid fire type moves, and this thing is a complete wall. It gets good stab moves, it gets good bug moves, gets good steel moves, gets good coverage. You can teach it wing attack and then evolve it into a Scizor. Good for Whitney. Good for what else is it good for? Jasmine for sure. Actually, no, it's not good for Jasmine. Um, I'm losing my head. Price, definitely good for. Good for Claire. Good for Lance. Good for Karen. I mean, it's good in a ton of battles. Steel typing, again, really, really good. Rocket and Rival battle, easy. Yeah. Scizor, definitely really good. Scyther, just a little bit worse, but both of them are really, really good. Pinsir is going to go into the same tier as Scyther. So Pinsir hits harder than Scyther, but isn't as fast. It has kind of better stab moves with Scizor. Gets fighting type moves with things like Brick Break. Is useful in kind of a similar spread of fights as Scyther. You get it at the same time. Just a very solid bug type Pokemon. And then Heracross is more of a fighting type than it is a bug type, but it's a damn good fighting type. It hits like an absolute truck. It has great special bulk. It does really well in a lot of fights, like Jasmine again, Whitney for sure, Price absolutely, and then Karen in the Elite Four, Bruno in the Elite Four, Will in the Elite Four. This thing hits like a truck. It is useful in a lot of fights. And just overall, you can't go wrong. It has great coverage moves and stab moves too. You really just can't go wrong with these things. Okay. So Weezing and Muck, I'm a little bit torn on because they are both pretty good defensively and kind of meh offensively. It's just that poison types are not good offensively. They only hit grass for super effective. Like, these things needed the fairy type more than steel type. No. Yeah, they needed the fairy type more than the steel types did. But I'm gonna put them both into meh. You get them a little bit too late for my liking for what they are, I guess. Um, Again, they both hit kind of hard, but not really. They both have decent, good defense. They just kind of get outclassed by other defensive Pokemon. And pure poison type is just not a great type to have. Like, you see Crobat and Nidoking up in the pretty good tier. That's because they're supplemented by ground type and flying type, which are both good types in these games. But Weezing and Muck just don't have that. So, meh. Alright, Magneton. Ooh. This is tough. So, Magneton, it doesn't get steel type stab, but it doesn't really need it. Whoa. Hello, hold on. What did I do? There we go. Um, anyway, sorry about that. Magneton. I'm debating between pretty good and excellent because it has a better typing than Ampharos and kind of the same moves, better stats, but you get it later. Um, what is it's useful against Price. It's useful against Chuck's Poliwrath. It's useful for Claire and Lent. Yeah, it's got to go into excellent. I think it's tied with Ampharos as the best electric types in these games. If it wasn't a steel type, it would not be where it is. Steel typing, again, really, really good at walling out a lot of Pokemon in these games. But yeah, I would say Magneton definitely deserves excellence here. It hits like a truck. It has really good physical bulk. It's a steel type. You can't go wrong. Electrode is really fast, and that's it. It's super duper replaceable as an electric type. It gets decent moves, like it can get Sonic Boom, Supersonic, I guess, Roll Out. It's again, it's really fast, but I don't love it for an in-game playthrough because it doesn't quite hit hard enough and it really gets outclassed. Like Ampharos and Magneton have a lot of special attack on it, then it just doesn't hit quite hard enough. All right, Apom is Ambipom in these games, and Apom is going to go into pretty good. Ambipom, excuse me. It gets great moves, to be quite honest. It gets better moves than you would expect. It's a very good normal type. It's fast. You get it, at a decent spot in the game. It's useful in a lot of fights, and it has good offense. And then Granbull is kind of in that same place. It hits a little bit harder, but it's a lot slower, but has a better move pool as well, I would say, than does Ambipom. So the only reason these two aren't in excellent is because there's something you can catch, or there's two things you can catch on the same route that are better than these two, in my opinion. Maybe not the other one, but definitely one of them is the best normal type in these games. But yeah, Ambipom and Granbull, both pretty good. Both definitely unique in how they're used. One's fast, one hits a little bit harder with a better move pool, but I'd say they're both pretty good. Ninetales is also going to go into pretty good. You get it pretty early, and it gets a lot of good utility moves like Will-O-Wisp, Confuse Ray, things of that nature. Just kind of gets outclassed. It doesn't hit as hard as some of the other really good fire types. Good moves though, good stats, good special bulk, useful against things like Jasmine, Bugsy, Price, your rival. Pretty good. Not great, pretty good. Arcanine, great. Arcanine is basically just Ninetales with somewhat better stats, a little bit better of a move pool. I wouldn't say somewhat better stats. It has much better stats. A decent move pool. Kind of a little bit worse than the move pool, actually. But the thing with Arcanine is its ability is Intimidate if you do it right. And Intimidate is really good. I don't know if I've made that clear or not, but there are already two Pokemon in the Excellence here with the Intimidate ability, and there's going to be at least one more. So Arcanine, Intimidate is really good. It has a lot of bulk. It hits hard. It has good moves. There is nothing wrong with Arcanine. If you don't pick Typhlosion, get an Arcanine. You got a fire type, man. Even Ninetales is pretty good. Stantler is horrendously outclassed by other normal types. It doesn't hit nearly as hard as them. But I'm going to say that its unique move pool with things like Hypnosis keeps it out of the stay away tier. It hits hard enough to where you can make it work, but not to the point where you want to use it over a lot of the other normal types in these games. Yeah, Stantler, you get it kinda early enough to make it useful. It's good against like Morty for sure, maybe a few other fights, but like it's really nothing special. It definitely gets outclassed. Azumarill, I'm gonna put Azumarill in the pretty good. The caveat being that you get a huge power Azumarill, because that makes its attack stat really good. You can get it physical water type moves for the first time in its life. Man, Gen 4 really helped out things like Feraligatr, Gyarados, Azumarill that are physical attacking water types. Again, you don't get it super early, but you also don't get it that late. Mount Border, you can access it before the fourth gym. Actually, maybe after, I don't know. But yeah, Azumarill hits hard for sure. Kinda maybe gets outclassed by a couple other water types, but it's pretty good. I like it in these games. Doug Trio. So, okay. I'm gonna put Doug Trio in pretty good only because you get it kinda late. you get it at the Safari Zone, which again, late. It's really fast. It hits pretty hard. It has good moves. It has good coverage. It's just not available until a little bit too late in the game. Again, useful against things like the rival and the rocket fights, but there are other better ground types like Golem and a few others that are coming up, but yeah, just kind of pretty good, really fast. That's his best feature. Same thing with Primate, pretty good. There are other fighting types that hit harder than it that you're going to be able to get earlier, but if you want like a fast fighting type, this is a good option. Useful against Price, Jasmine, Karen in the Elite Four. Has good stats, has good enough moves. It just kind of is a little bit too late for what it is to go into the excellent tier. All right. Persian, meh. Persian stays out of stay away because of how fast it is. But other than that, it's very, very outclassed. You get it kind of late in the Safari Zone again. Yeah, I don't love Persian. Uh, fast, just very underwhelming. When I have a lack of words for a Pokemon, it's usually just because it's underwhelming. And that's what Persian is for sure. All right. With that, we have a decent amount of Pokemon left. We're gonna cut this video right here. Be sure to tune into part 2. It should be coming in a few days. I'll just kind of show you what the list looks like so far. I'll zoom out a little bit. Yeah, so that's the list so far. Be sure to leave any disagreements, agreements, or kind of any other comments that you have for the list so far. Again, part 2 will be out soon, but thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time with part 2.